कस्तुरुचित्रा उषसः पुरस्तान् मितायिव स्वरवो अध्वरेषु यूरजस्य तमसो द्वारोच्छन्ति.
Our sages composed hymns in praise of the Creator, the sublime beauty of nature and its bounties. In the course of time, these hymns became a part of religious rituals and ceremonies, which were evolved for the development of our social and cultural values. With the passage of time, many of these rituals and values attained religious sanctity. Most of them emphasize bounties and fertility.
We love and honor each other as man and wife for the rest of your life.
Continued practice of several of these values and beliefs have a bearing on our fertility behavior and has resulted in an unchecked growth of population. When India became independent in 1947, our population was only about 330 million. Since 1947, killer diseases like plague, cholera, smallpox, and malaria were either eliminated or controlled. Massive healthcare programs also increased child survival. Immunization and Medicare of mother and child made great improvements in the standard of health and increased the average lifespan. While the death rate declined appreciably, the birth rate did not come down proportionately, resulting in the widening gap between births and deaths. The alarming increase in population is reflected in the census reports of the last 5 decades. By March 1951, our population was 361 million. In the next 10 years, it increased by 80 million to 439 million. By March 1971, another sharp increase of 109 million to 548 million. In 1981, a jump of 135 million to over 683 million. By March 1991, the figure had reached an astronomical 846.30 million. This represents a 134% increase in the population between 1951 and 1991, putting great pressure on the country's resources and land space. What is more, it goes on increasing at the rate of 48 births a minute, 2,880 an hour, and 63,360 a day. It is like adding one Australia to our population every year. At this rate, by the early next century, our population will be more than that of China, the most populous country in the world today. But China has 3 times more land area than India. While India has only 2.4% of the world's land surface, it has 16% of the Earth's population. In other words, every sixth person in the world is an Indian. This enormous growth in population has contributed to land degradation and consequential poverty conditions. We have come to this pass because of the ignorance and poverty of a large segment of our population, which continues to be influenced by many outdated values and beliefs that have a direct bearing on the growth of our population. Some of these values have indirectly acted as hurdles in our plans for reduction in birth rate. Let us examine these values and their relevance in the fast-changing world. Our ancestors must have lived in small communities. The mortality rate was high due to diseases, tribal conflicts, and the harsh environment. They tended to have more children for survival, to hunt for food, and for the protection of their families. For this, they propagated certain beliefs, and to popularize them, they created some rituals and ceremonies. Despite the advance of science and technology, old values and beliefs continue to have their deep-rooted influence. According to the Rig Veda, the early inhabitants introduced the system of marriage because it was considered essential for the growth and survival of their race. They also created rituals and ceremonies that gave a social sanction to the marriage. It is clear from the marriage hymns of Surya and the rite of Vishwavasu mentioned in the Rig Veda that at the time of marriage in Vedic times, the girls were fully grown up. Child marriage was unknown, and there is no mention of it in any of the Vedas. Women were considered to be men's equal, and according to Indian mythology and legends, Sita, Savitri, Draupadi, and others selected their own husbands through Swayamvara. They must have been grown-up women to be able to make their own choice. The practice of child marriage seems to have come in during the medieval period, perhaps to protect the young girls from invading hordes. Though times have changed, yet the practice of child marriage continues till today, and in some parts of the country. Shushruta Samhita, written by India's greatest surgeon in the 2nd century AD, prescribes the ideal age for marriage for men 25 years and for girls above 16 years. Modern science fully supports this thesis. Early marriage is injurious to health. An underdeveloped female body cannot sustain the fetus. Children born to very young mothers may be physically handicapped or may not live long. That is why, under the present law, the minimum marriageable age for girls has been fixed at 18 years. By this age, the girls have had full opportunity for their mental and physical development. In primitive societies, perhaps, the people performed early marriages and wanted sons because male youths were required to plow the fields and do heavy manual work. More hands were also required to work on the farms and to bring the harvest home. Now times have changed. The modern methods of agriculture are not only economical, but also more productive. They need far fewer hands. Today, the increase in the size of rural families has led to fragmentation of land holdings on account of divisions amongst the descendants. More children mean more divisions and lesser land for successive generations. This would not only make agriculture uneconomical, but also someday there may not be enough land even to stand on. Many feel that a man must have a son to continue the family name and to perform the last rites of his parents. This belief, too, seems to be the legacy of the past, when male members were required for agriculture and to perform heavy manual jobs. Generally, people continue to follow the belief that only a son has to perform the traditional ceremonies of Pindadan and Shraddha for the departed ancestors. But according to Manusmriti, the last rites, Pindadan and Shraddha, can be performed by any relative, including the wife, the daughter, the children of the daughter, and even students of a guru. Yet the misinterpretation of the ancient scriptures continues to influence our thinking. In many families, because of a strong bias in favor of a male child, the mother of a son is much honored. Parents having only daughters go on having more children in the hope that the next child may be a son. This man is unhappy because he is the father of 4 daughters and wants a son. His wife is pregnant again in the hope of begetting a son. Because of such a hope, a woman is subjected to repeated pregnancies. Some parents feel that sons are necessary for their old age security. But time has shown that a daughter can provide the same security with equal confidence and affection. In his epic Manusmriti, the ancient lawgiver Manu has written that there is no difference between a son and a daughter. People believe the child to be a gift of God. If so, there should be no difference between a son and a daughter. Generally, the happiness displayed at the birth of a son is absent when a girl is born. Even today, when women play an important role in national affairs, they are being discriminated against. Articles 14 and 16 of the Constitution of India fully protect the rights of women and grant them equal opportunity for employment and holding of high offices. Given the opportunity today, the women of India have emerged as men's equal in every sphere of national activity. They are members of parliament and legislatures. In the Supreme Court and High Courts, they are sitting judges and lawyers. They are administrators, engineers, architects, scientists and doctors. They have entered the field of specialized professions and sophisticated technology. They are also good providers of the family. They are commanders in the national and international airlines. In rural India, women have achieved significant success as teachers, members of panchayat, and social workers. Under the Hindu Succession Act, women enjoy equal rights to inherit the paternal property. Women have all along played a significant role in shaping the destiny of India. They were warrior queens, writers, educationists, political leaders, diplomats, ministers, and Prime Minister. In spite of their great achievements and their great contributions in various fields, they tend to be discriminated against, and the craving for sons continues to dominate. Usually, women are blamed for the birth of daughters, but failure to beget a son is not the fault of the mother. It is a biological phenomenon, and medically, it is the father who is responsible for the sex of the child. Discrimination in favor of sons has been a major factor for the adverse male-female ratio in the country. In 1981, for every 1,000 males, there were 934 females. In 1991, for every 1,000 males, there were 927 females. However, in Kerala, it is different. For every 1,000 males, there are 1,036 females. Perhaps it is because the majority of the people there used to follow the matriarchal system of female inheritance, which gives higher status to women. The birth of a girl is considered auspicious in Kerala. Another factor is the 100% literacy in the state, which enables girls to pursue their studies and take part in national and international events like sports before settling down to married life. This has helped Kerala reduce the birth rate to only 20 per 1,000 per year, the lowest in the country. On the other hand, in Rajasthan, for every 1,000 males, there are only 913 females. In Uttar Pradesh, there are barely 882, and in Bihar, just 912. But surprisingly, even with lesser number of females, the birth rate in these states is 37 per 1,000 per year, the highest in India. The reason could be very low literacy and discrimination against the girl child. If this trend continues, the declining male-female ratio may lead to disastrous consequences. Poverty and lack of education have impeded our efforts to remove outdated values and beliefs. We are heading towards an accelerated population explosion because many people still believe that the birth of a child is in the hands of God. Such an attitude can be changed only through education. Education alone can bring about enlightenment and proper understanding, so necessary to remove misapprehensions and the cause of discrimination between a male and a female child, and remove ignorance and superstitions. Only through introduction of family life education and population education, we can bring down our birth rate. We must remember that a daughter is as good as a son. As per Manusmriti, she can perform all the religious rites also. Our Constitution grants her equal rights in every sphere of activity. We must remember that the marriage of a daughter before the age of 18 and of a son before 21 years is against the law of the land. Early marriages are among the causes of our population explosion. Whatever class or community we may belong to, we can ensure a better life for our children only by limiting the size of our families. The responsibility for limiting the family has to be equally shared both by the husband and the wife. We have to remember that a small family is comparatively in a better position to look after its children by providing them with nutrition, clothing, space, education, and a better standard of living. The small family norm is necessary for the good of every one of us. Otherwise, someday, there may not be room enough for our children.